Megadeth wants your children. For illegal acts and wild orgies? Hardly. Band leader, guitarist, singer Dave Mustaine wants kids to grow up free from the shadow of nuclear annihilation. Wants them to learn to read and write, maybe even think for themselves. Mustaine, in fact, can sound more like a political candidate than a heavy metal guitar guy, but that hasn't stopped Tipper Gore's scolds from the Parents Music Resource Center from condemning Megadeth as a corrupting influence on the kinder. The band returned fire with the song Hook 'Em Out, an anti-censorship disbuster on So Far, So Good, So What that strafes the PMRC like the Luftwaffe. Mustaine spits out a motor mouth spelling civics lesson on freedom. We elect them, we eject them, with such palpable loathing it's a wonder spittle doesn't ricochet off the turntable. And Tipper would be surprised to learn that Mustaine hates cock rock as much as her censorious Washington coffee clutch. It's not the size of the pencil, Dave says, it's how you write your name. We leave talk of sex to sissy fluff bands like Winger. We shoot from the hip, not the crotch. So hey there, interweb metalheads. This is ex-rock critic Mark Barsani, and what you just heard was the beginning of my Megadeth story that originally appeared in the Denver All-Weekly Westword. I occasionally now write rock books like Rock is Dead They Say, Volume 1, 2nd edition, available at your local Amazon, which contains my complete interview with Dave and a bunch of other rock critter gibberish I've written about Megadeth and other rockers over the years. But hey, you didn't click on this video to hear me, so without further ado, here's part 1 of young Mr. Mustaine, recorded on, Jesus Christ, all the way back on November 1st of 1990.
Yes, Bobby Underwood, please.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Dave there.
Who's this?
It's Mark Barsani in Denver.
Okay, can you hold?
Sure. Judy from Capitol said we'd have about a half hour. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's up till 2:15.
Okay, let's get started here. I want to start out by reading you something out of a new book that's called Painted Black by a professor of, I guess, religious studies or something, and we can get into this discussion. Let me read this to you. Heavy metal, which he compares to the torchlight processions in Nazi Germany, is an explosion of fury, a righteous eruption of barbarous emotion. Heavy metal is art, says Aquino, albeit of a terrorist stamp. All the good causes these days have evaporated: the environment, AIDS, the homeless, except for evil. According to Dr. Paul King, at University of Tennessee, psychiatrist who testified about heavy metal music before a Senate committee, the 1980s have been earmarked by a vacuum of aimless rebellion and personal impotency. Only heavy metal music remains to ignite the emotions. King's studies of adolescent patients admitted for drug and psychological problems give us a clue about what is at stake with heavy metal. Disturbed adolescents, regardless of whether they are on drugs, display a staggering incidence of violent behavior and sexual promiscuity. This disability goes hand in hand with their immature brain capacity to control adequately the erotic and aggressive drives. The abuse of drugs renders the situation lethal. The strains of violence, fury, hate, insurrection, primitive sex, and as the kids call it, headbanging, in heavy metal music cements a neutral bond that of all stripes of alienated adolescents. The incidence of heavy metal, however, is markedly increased as an adolescent abuses drugs in his or her day-to-day activity, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's quite a mouthful there. But I'd like to get into the whole censorship thing and the whole right-wing Tipper Gore satanic bullshit rap, because I'm sure you guys get a lot of it.
Well, get started.
Okay, well, what is your, what's your comment on what you just heard?
Well, it sounds like his old lady dumped him for a heavy metal guitar player.
Seriously though, because there are people who I think are stupid or whatever, but that are supposedly intelligent that say this kind of stuff, and instead of just, blowing them off because they are unfortunately part of the political dialogue in this country. What do you think is the best way for bands to deal with that kind of criticism?
Well, by not advocating or condoning, promiscuity or drug addiction or insurrection or any of the things that you were talking about, the rage and the anger, the hatred and the lying, the violence, and just the whole denial that goes along with it. I think that, for Christ's sake, that's not only with the heavy metal scene. Maybe you should go to a country show sometime. Maybe you should go to a rap show sometime. Maybe you should go to a New Kids on the Block show sometime and see some of those outraged, terrorized women, teeny boppers. Tell them that if they had to blow the whole road crew, and even though they were 12, they would do it to meet the band, they'd be on their knees in a heartbeat. It just is a matter of idolism and what goes on and the way that people react to role models and lead figures. And I think that it's been a long time since there's been any lead role models that have actually been able to stand up for anything courageously without being defiant to society and actually contributing to the well-being and the betterment of the youth that does listen to the music, regardless whether it's in heavy metal or not. There isn't very many people in the music industry that really has anything to say that's not revolving around sex or partying or having a good time. And I think there's a lot more to writing music than talking about sex. I think for us, talking about sex is better left to, the pop, sissy fluff bands, like Winger and stuff like that,
Okay.
And, it's like I said earlier, we're a band that shoots from the hip, not from the crotch. When it comes down to, singing about drugs and stuff like that, if anything, I'm condoning my drug addiction. I did when I was still using, and I wrote 502. And Poison Was the Cure, the first song on side 2 of our new LP. It talks about my, the dichotomy, well, actually the paradox that I was, completely denying, and the fact that poison was the cure. In my eyes, I didn't know the difference between the two. And I'm not going to say that it's a dichotomy or paradox or either one. That's for you to decipher. But for me, I think that, it is in a sense because it's two things that are complete opposites that are relevant to the same thing. And, it's just like for me, I had to...
Go ahead, let's let that go.
What's that?
Go ahead, that's just another call on that line. I'll just let it ring. It'll be off in a second.
I had to surrender to win in order to let go of, giving up the power, I gained strength, and for me, it's at a point right now in my life where I realize that, people are going to say what they want to say, and that's a right that we have, I can say you're an asshole, you can say I'm an asshole, and it's not that I'm right or you're right, but,
you have the right to say it.
Our feelings.
You have the right to be wrong.
It's valid because there are feelings, and it's the whole thing about censorship. Now, for example, with Two Live Crew, everybody's making such a big deal about them. I feel that Two Live Crew has no merit in the music business whatsoever, and they're popular because of the public's curiosity. Now, I'm sure a lot of those records ended up as frisbees after people bought it and listened to the nonsense, the banter that was going on, and the derogatory slander of the woman. I think that it's a bit degrading to women in general, some of the stuff that's going on, with their lyrics. But, then again, I can't say that if I was, naive to what their whole vibe's about, that I wouldn't buy one of their records. But I know what they're about, and I don't dig it, and therefore I didn't have to, do research and buy their shit.
Okay, one more thing, and then we'll get off the whole born-again Christian thing. You guys have, the first album, Killing Is My Business, and song titles like Last Rites, Love's Death, Into the Lungs of Hell, Devil's Island and stuff. A born-again type, could look at that and have a field day with it. Are you guys trying to be deliberately provocative with those kind of titles, or?
I'm not going to say so much that, I would do that, use monikers or entitle stuff to be controversial. I very much so tend to steer clear of stirring up the mud and tranquil water that I've come to know right now. Although what I feel is a good topic, it doesn't matter what I title it. It's what the feeling concerns and what it requires. I try to title a song as concisely as possible. I mean, I can name a bunch of assholes that have music that have very long on and on titles. And, I don't think that that's very it's definitely not. It's I don't know how to say this right, but it's not indicative of what the band is capable of doing. If they can't even title something without having to use a lot of words, it shows the lack of ability for them to express their feelings. A very poor vocabulary. I think that some of our titles, like "Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good," that's a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. I mean, I could say "I'll kill you for money." It's the same kind of idea. Or like "I'm rich from killing," But I mean, it's like the tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. It's kind of a parody on the whole organized crime deal. And Peace Sells But Who's Buying is a little bit more slender when it comes down to amount of consonants and vowels in a title. And I think that also too hits the mark very well. So far, so good, so what? 6 words, very strong meaning. A couple of periods here and there, but this album, Rest in Peace, is the shortest title yet, but I feel that this one carries the most validity as far as talking about the world conditions right now, and that the mechanics of the world, if we do ever come under, the title of being a peaceful nation, living within those guidelines, within those parameters of being a peaceful planet, you know what, the world functions off of military, government, federation, weaponry, armament, death, and war. And if peace ever came, the machinery of that monster, that war machine, would come screeching to a halt. All the gears would stop, and they would therefore rust in peace.
Okay. Yeah, you guys have done a lot of stuff that can be taken more political than anything else, and a lot of nuclear war stuff. With all the stuff that's been going on in the world the last couple of years, changes in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc and all that, are you more optimistic than you maybe were a couple of years ago about whether the world's going to blow itself to hell or not? Or
well, I think that Mikhail Gorbachev definitely deserved the Nobel Peace Prize for the accomplishments that he's made for the Russian and the communist people over there, trying to break the communism into a democracy over there. I can't really ever see the United States and Russia living in equal, sanctimonious harmony, but I can understand that there are things changing. In my lifetime, it may not happen. The day after I die, it might, and hopefully I'll be able to be there to see something happen. I was alive when the Berlin Wall came down. Although I wasn't there, I didn't actually see it. We played there, and I saw some of the, not necessarily repercussions, but some of the, the rippling effect of that wall going down, and other people being in Western Germany that are from Eastern Germany, walking around clutching their coats, wide-eyed, looking around, expecting someone to shoot them for, jumping off the sidewalk, And it must be, I'm not going to say, frightening, but from my viewpoint, a lot of the people that I could tell were, from Eastern Germany were entranced with the way the Western German people were.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the 2-year layoff that you guys have had in replacing Chris and Gar with Marty and Nick.
Well, there was another line of change between Chris Gar and Nick and Marty. After Chris Gar left because of serious drug problems that the band had developed, I thought that getting rid of them would be getting rid of the drug problems. Little did I know that I'd already, inseminated myself with the disease, and it was that I had spawned actually the fetus of my addiction, within myself, and I couldn't blame anybody else for it. And we had gotten 2 new members, which also fell prey to the precocious predator that I've come to know as addiction, and it's now evident to me that it was my problem that I had to deal with, and whether or not anybody else around me drinks or uses, that's okay, because it may still work for you. You may still be able to do, a joint or I can't. I'd lose it. I think I'm immortal. I think I'm bulletproof, you know, and I'm 10 feet tall when I have a drink. And you know what? Fuck me. I'm not going to do that shit no more. Now it's evident that life is much better for me because I'm no longer paying the high price of low living. I have 2 band members in the band now that are new. Not relatively new to the business, but in this lineup. Marty's been around for quite a while playing guitar. As long as I can remember, you know, me being in this scene, I know that Marty was in it many, many moons ago, and it kind of opted for going for a little bit more selective audience, like I say in Spinal Tap. But I know that Nick also has a lot of jazz influence. His father was the one that blew the sax on the Pink Panther.
Cool. With your drug problem, was it a specific drug or just the whole drugs in general?
It was
Drugs,
one drug only.
What was it?
More.
What was the drug, if you...
More.
Oh, okay, I get you.
If I could have got loaded off of gasoline, I would have wanted more.
Whatever's handy, yeah, I know. I go through that.
Yeah.
How long have you been clean now?
Almost 6 months now. Dave Ellison has been clean over a year now.
Cool. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Hangar 18. The whole story or legend story has fascinated me through the years. Was that just something to write a song about, or do you like give credence to that whole idea that...
Well, I'm not going to say that I give anything to anybody because it's hard for me to give really of what I have if I know nothing of it, and I still am doing research on it. Nick is fascinated by it. I would say he has a fixation for it, but I think obsession is a better word. And it's come to my attention that there is a lot of stuff that goes on behind closed doors with the government. And the words that I chose, military intelligence, those are 2 words that I just can't see going together in the same sentence, like George Carlin said. You know, it's like jumbo shrimp.
Yeah, in fact, I have a note here about that exact line. I would ask you about it. I mean, it's kind of to say that, you know, those 2 words are contradictory or whatever. It's kind of like, you know, a snappy one-liner out of a MASH episode or something. But don't you think that it's a scarier fact that there are smart, intelligent people who cold-bloodedly go about the business of preparing for mass death, Megadeth?
The thing that makes me the most terrified of all is the fact that the cattle mutilation is going on. The government has silent helicopters that come in the middle of the night and take cattle up, and they completely dismember the cattle. They encircle their anus, cut their throat, pull out all their intestines, and what they do is that the intestinal tract, all the internal organs of a cow, is the closest organ, you know, comparison as far as similarities are concerned to the human body as possible. And what they've done is they've taken the stomach lining and all that other stuff, you know, the ovaries, the genitals, and they've been breeding, evidently, and this may not come down to you as being logical, but this is what I've read, that they're breeding alien and mutations of humans and, you know, different various life forms, animals crossbred with humans crossbred with aliens, all this kind of shit, in cryogenic chambers, in sealed laboratories, in test tubes, and all different kinds of, you know, monitored life support systems, and it freaks me out to think about the fact that, you know, the one thing that I was reading about was saying that there are humans that have like 4 to 8 legs. You know, and I mean, you know, if that's not true, it'd make a hell of a good fiction novel.
Yeah.
All right, there we are with part 1 of Young Dave Mustaine, 1990. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We will be back with the concluding part 2, hopefully in the not too distant future. Meanwhile, like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Again, this is Mark Barsotti, and this has been a Not Ready for Podcasting production.